I'm sure that there's going to be families who were unable to make it. And so we want to make sure that we give our families as many opportunities to hear our discussions. So that's the first thing. This will then go on live on YouTube. There are going to be questions. You're going to have an opportunity to ask us questions. It's going to be at the end of the presentation, and we're going to ask you to use the chat feature. Eric, do you want to just talk a little bit about the chat feature so that everybody understands how that works? If you haven't done it already.
Yep. It in Google Meet on the lower right, there's it looks like a cartoon text box, like speaking box. If you click that, it'll open up it's called in-call messages, and it gives you the ability to be able to type things in and post them. Any of the team from the middle school and administration will be able to see that, and we'll be able to hopefully have some time to be able to respond to your questions. As Mrs. Rodriguez just said, if you could just keep those to the end, because we have a lot of information that we do plan on presenting to you. So certainly, hopefully, if you have a question that's in your mind, there's a good chance that we may be able to actually hopefully answer it in the various items that we're going to be speaking to you about.
Thank you, Eric. Dr. Hassler. So again, I want to welcome those who just got on with us. This is another way of us reaching out to our community. One of the things that we think are the most important things, and I mentioned it last year when I spoke about the budget, which is we're going back to basics, and basics is teaching and learning. And so today's meeting is really geared to talk about the things that are going on at the middle school specifically. The agenda is packed. You may say, there's something that's not on the agenda, but I'd like to speak about it. Or there's something specific to my child. I recommend that you reach out to the building principal, to an assistant principal. We have directors on this call, and they'll all talk about their jobs and their functions so that you put a name to a face. So that really is the purpose. If there's an item that we're not discussing, what I am asking our families to do is to reach out to me, because we plan on having more of these. And we want to make sure that our topics are relevant to our families. So again, this is a packed agenda, and we're looking forward to having these conversations with you. So one of the things I want to speak about is, why are we doing this? And the purpose, again, is to make sure that we communicate with our families in various ways. And we use email, newsletters, there's board meetings that we present a lot of information, but something that we haven't done a lot of, which is a Crusader chat live online. And we do it at 12 o'clock because we felt that if you're a working parent, you may be able to make it at 12 o'clock. It doesn't mean that it will always be at 12 o'clock. We're really trying to figure out what time is best for our families. So if this doesn't work for some of our families, maybe we have another one at 3 o'clock or in the evening. But again, this is really our attempt to talk about what's going on in our classroom, what programs we offer, what's going on in teaching and learning, and we're going to do this in multiple ways. So without further ado, I want to begin and introduce our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Eric Hassler.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you. I see, aside from the middle school team, I see a lot of very familiar names, so it's good to see you. My name is Eric Hassler. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction at the secondary level. So I focus predominantly on grades 6 through 12 and all things that are curriculum and instruction. First thing I'm going to do, for those that had just recently joined us, I posted in the chat just the agenda for today, and we're going to kind of go through a variety of different topics. The first topic that we're going to be speaking about is state assessments, middle school assessments in general, but I'm going to be talking specifically about the various state assessments that are being administered in the middle school. A lot of the conversation in recent years has been specifically about the ELA and the math assessments. However, those are only a portion of the state assessments that are administered. We have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that take the ELA assessment in the spring. They also take the math assessment in the spring. There's also an 8th grade science assessment that students take. And if students take the either algebra or biology, they also take the Regents exam at the end of the school year. So there's actually quite a few different state assessments. Later on, when I introduce Mr. Berger, he's going to spend more time speaking about some of the building level assessments that are also administered. But I just want to kind of give a quick overview in a little bit more detail about the various state assessments that the middle school administers. As I said, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders take the ELA and the math assessment. The 23 school year, the 22-23 school year, this spring administration will be the first that those assessments are linked to the next gen standards. Prior to that, the assessments were linked to the Common Core standards. So this year is the first year where they're shifting from the old Common Core standards to the new ELA, New York State Next Generation standards. The assessments are administered over 2 days. They range anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half or so. They're staggered. They're usually administered April, sometimes early as May, depending upon as early as March, depending upon when spring break falls. Beyond the ELA and the math assessments, we also administer a state assessment in science in 8th grade. This year's state assessment in 2022-23 is the final year where they're taking it under the old format, where they have a 1-day performance portion where they do sort of lab assessment activities, and there's 1 day where the assessment is administered on paper, where they take a written exam. Next year, the 2024 exam is shifting in science from the old state standards to the next gen science standards, and the assessment's going to look a little bit different. There are a series of lab exercises that the students are going to be required to participate in. Those labs are starting in 7th grade. So if you have a 7th grader this year, there's a couple of labs that they're going to be doing over the course of the school year in 7th grade. And then there are a series of labs that they're going to be doing next year in 8th grade. And then next spring, they'll be taking a new version of the grade 8 science assessment, again, linked to the next generation science standards. That assessment is shifting from paper-based to computer-based. Next year, New York State is in the process of phasing in computer-based testing, where previously all of the assessments were administered on paper. The assessments are going to be required not only in the grade 8 science exam, but also grades 5 and 8 are going to be required to take ELA and math exam, the ELA and the math exams on the computer as well. So next year, we're continuing with the phasing in of our computer-based testing program, where we actually started, the state has established requirements of phasing that in. We started in 2018, where the 3rd graders were our first group of students who took the ELA assessment on the computer. The following year, 2019, students in grades 3 and 4, that cohort of kids, took the ELA assessment on the computer. All of the students took tests on paper. That cohort of students is now in the middle school. They're in 6th grade. So we're continuing with the rollout of computer-based testing, where this year 6th graders will be taking the ELA exam on paper. 7th and 8th grade will continue to, on the computer. 7th and 8th grade will continue to take it on paper. All of the math exam will continue to be on paper. Next year is the first year of the phasing in of computer-based testing, where it's going to be required. The state has required that. So next year we'll have 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders all taking the ELA exam on the computer, and 8th graders will also be taking the science and the math exam on the computer. The remaining students will be taking it on math. The following year, 6th grade is going to be required. So 6th grade is going to be taking the assessments exclusively on the computer, both ELA and math. And then the following school year, all students will be required. So no assessments will be administered on paper-based at all. All assessments are going to be required to be administered on the computer. So we're gradually going to be phasing that in. The only assessments that will continue, at least in the immediate future, they haven't announced any plans to have the Regents exams to be taken on the computer. So the algebra and the biology exam will continue to be paper-based until they come up with an alternate plan in terms of, if they offer something different from the Regents exams. Beyond that, in terms of communicating the results of those exams, If your child has taken any of the state assessments in the past, you're familiar with receiving the report that the school district sends out. Once the state has all of the scores and they've normed the assessments, they send to the school district the reports of all and the results of all students that sat for the exams the previous year. It's usually in the beginning of the following school year, so like September, October-ish is when that information comes out. As soon as the school district is given the thumbs up from the state to be able to send those results home, parents get a copy of the report saying, here are the results that your child scored on the ELA math and science exams. The Regents exams, the process is the same. Those are scored right at the time that the assessments are administered, and it appears on the students' report cards and the students' transcripts. In terms of the ELA and the math and the science exams, those exams do not appear on the students' transcripts. They're not part of the, they don't receive a grade for them in parent portal where you can look in and you can see the results. Those are results that are kept separately. However, that does not mean that the school district doesn't use the results. Those assessments are intended to evaluate student progress through the state standards. That's the reason why you keep hearing me say that they're linked to the old Common Core standards previously, now the new Next Gen standards. They have standards at every single grade level. So the assessments assist the school district in not only evaluating individual progress and development of our students, it also allows us to be able to evaluate our curriculum and making sure that all of our material that we're teaching is aligned to the state standards. So that information is absolutely valuable to the school district. We also use it for other decisions, like in terms of if students require any sort of academic intervention and receiving of additional services. So the state assessments is one slice of that data that we use in terms of determining student growth. Another piece of information that we use is various other building level assessments. So next up is going to be Mr. Chris Berger, the principal of the middle school, and he's going to talk a little bit more about other assessments that are being used at the building level.
Can I just jump in before Mr. Berger speaks?
Sure.
Thank you, Eric, for that piece about assessments. I think I also wanted to share with the people that are on the call with us is that Dr. Hassler and Mr. Kravitz did a really, really in-depth presentation. I believe it was 2 board meetings ago, not this past board meeting, but the previous one. And a lot of the information he's sharing with you is also in that presentation, because I know that sometimes information is given to you and you're like, wow, this is a lot, right? And so I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to go on those meetings. All of our board meetings are on YouTube. You just Google it on YouTube. But I believe it was 2 meetings ago, and they really talked about, the purpose of that meeting was really to talk about the scores, and the scores were not what we would expect our students to do, but it was also after the students had come back from the pandemic. It was also online. And so the presentation was really about how do we prepare our kids for these, make sure that they're prepared for these exams. And I say that loosely because that's not the piece, that's not why we teach, but also to make them to have a better assessment of how our students are doing. So that's another piece that I didn't do, Eric. So I apologize. I should have said that part of this meeting really is to talk about why we think as a school district, it's important for students to take this test. This test is a small piece of information. So I don't want people to walk away saying this is the most important piece of information. It is a piece of information. But as we start to, as a district, talk about where our students are and what the needs are, this piece of information is important to us. So I think that was really important for me to say. So just a reminder, if you want to see the presentation that both Dr. Hassler and Mr. Kravitz presented to the board 2 board meetings ago, you can go on YouTube. And that, again, they did an excellent presentation, and it was detailed, and there's charts and there's things for you to look at. So now I'm going to introduce Mr. Berger, our middle school principal.
Thank you very much. Welcome, parents and guardians. It's great to see many familiar faces and names that are joining us on this call. And if you're unable to join us, hopefully you're able to view this, chat later on at your convenience. But we welcome you that we're able to join us today. So as Dr. Hassler alluded to, we obviously, we are focusing and stressing the importance of taking the state assessments and, why we use that data to help be one piece of that puzzle to drive our instruction. But, you may be asking, what else are we doing in terms of assessments over the course of the day, over the course of the year? Again, the state assessments is a very small piece of the overall puzzle of what we're looking at when identifying needs and strengths of students. So our teachers here at the middle school have been working very hard over the past couple of years to work within each respective department as far as their pacing guides go of their curriculum, so that they are in the vicinity of one another when presenting the content and material to their classes, so that regardless of your instructor or teacher for your child, that everyone is working on the same content, within reason of one another, within a couple of days of each other. And that's important because we want to make sure that all of the content in the curriculum is being taught in a timely manner so that we're able to get through the curriculum. And by doing that, the teams have been working very, very hard, tirelessly, that was a tough word to come out, on creating common assessments. And the purpose of the common assessments, again, is so that every student is being offered the same opportunity. We are providing an equitable education for all of our students, so that each department, they are creating assessments along the course of the school year where everybody in that grade level, according to grade level in each content area, is taking the same exact assessment. And that gives us information, one, to help drive instruction for the teachers. If there's a particular area that may need more reinforcement, or that an area the kids are doing really well on, maybe in future years we take a look at that pacing guide and we don't need to spend as much time in a certain area. But it also helps, obviously, us to be able to track students to see how they are progressing, if we're able to offer more support services to students as well. So, we use that data for a variety of purposes, but it's important that we are providing these common assessments so that everybody is getting the same opportunity, that all students, regardless of your teacher, they're taking the same exact test. In addition to the common assessments, and that looks differently depending on the department. Some departments may have more assessments than others based on the content that they're teaching. But in addition to the common assessments that the teachers have been working on over the past couple of years, obviously there are other assignments that factor into your child's grade, such as their regular class assignments, class projects, their everyday classwork, their quizzes. All of that is included in essentially 90% of their grade, along with their assessments. The other 10% of the grade is for the completion of homework. So that's how your child's grades are formulated. In addition to the classroom and common assessments that kids are taking, we are mandated, as many of you are probably aware on this call, we're mandated by New York State to administer 3 benchmark assessments over the course of the school year. This is no different than if you have been in the district for years. Your kids took the same assessments at the elementary level. We administer the STAR reading, which is an ELA assessment, and we also administer a STAR math assessment that's taken 3 times over the course of the year. Many of you probably are familiar with it, but it is a computer adaptive assessment, which means that it's individualized and adaptive to each student's level of proficiency. Their answers, or the questions that they are being given, changes based on their previous answer. So if a student gets a question correct, the next question gets a little bit more complex or a little bit harder in difficulty. If a student gets the question incorrect, the subsequent or follow-up question becomes a little bit easier for that student, so that they can find that just right, proficiency level for students. Similar to, the common assessments, the driving purpose behind the STAR benchmark assessments is to really drive instruction. Teachers are given skill sets where they should be focusing on for students. It allows teachers to differentiate according to ability levels and where kids are performing in the classroom. And that's the main purpose behind it. Obviously, we are able to use use it for other things. Again, I kind of mentioned earlier that we use that data, along with other factors, but to make informed decisions about any instructional support, that students may need or require. It also gives you as parents the ability to kind of track your individual child's growth over a period of time. One thing to mention is that kids don't start from the beginning, though, every time that they take the test. So if they leave off, I'm just going to use a number, I'm just going to pick a number out of the sky. If the students in the fall get a scaled score of a 900, they start right there at that same place when they start their next assessment in the winter. They don't go back to zero and start over. So, sometimes you may not see as much growth over the course of the year in terms of a scaled score. And that's because, again, you're starting off where you last left off. So that's important to keep in mind. But it does give us the ability to track our students' progress over periods of time, dating back to their elementary years. So it is valuable information. There's a lot. It's very in depth for teachers. They're given a lot of information based on how their students are progressing, and it is something that we do feel is valuable and that we do use to help drive our instruction. Certainly, if you have questions about assessments or things that we're doing in terms of the curriculum, you can always contact me here at the school. You can contact some of our assistant principals. I mean, we are always readily available to help and work alongside of you to support our students. I know that we're going to be going through and introducing some of the directors on the call, some of the middle school team that we have here. I just wanted to point out that there are 2 assistant principals that are not able to be here to join us for this call, so I just wanted to mention them. Mrs. Gina Dudgeon is our 6th grade assistant principal, and she oversees our ELA department, along with many other departments, but as far as our core content areas go, she does oversee the ELA component in our school. And we have Mr. Kevin Sullivan, who is our 7th grade assistant principal. He oversees our social studies department as well. So a lot of times if you call the school, based on the grade of your particular child, you'll get a response from one of the administrators based on the grade that they're working with. And we do that because the administrators then follow your children throughout the 3 years here. So Mr. Sullivan, I just mentioned, is the 7th grade assistant principal. Next year, he's going to become the 8th grade assistant principal. So your children that are 7th graders move up to 8th grade, and Mr. Sullivan remains a constant administrator for you and your families. And with that, our 8th grade assistant principal, our current 8th grade assistant principal, is on our call. So I would like to introduce Mrs. Lori Edelman.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm excited to be here. This is my first year here in Monroe Woodbury, so it's nice to meet everyone that's on the call and kind of introduce myself a little bit. I came from Beacon as an assistant principal there for a few years at the middle school, so middle school is not new to me. But I do oversee the math and science departments here at the middle school. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. With our math department, starting at the end of 6th grade, our students are able to apply to the accelerated math program, so that when they're in 7th grade, they get some of the 7th grade math curriculum and a lot of the 8th grade math curriculum as well. And then when they move on into 8th grade, they are able to be in the accelerated program and take the Algebra 1 class and then end up taking the Regents at the end of the 8th grade, so that they can go into the high school, again, accelerated in their math program. And as far as our science program goes, it works the same way. With the end of their 7th grade year, they get to try to be a part of the 8th grade accelerated program and be in the living environment biology class, and again, take the Regents at the end of their 8th grade school year to have that credit going into their high school career. And I know Mrs. Hassler is going to be talking a lot more about some of the curriculum and different things that we offer here at the middle school. And we will put some links into the chat so that you can go directly to the website if you have any questions, you want to learn more about those curriculum pieces. And as Mr. Berger said, if there's ever any questions regarding the math science or any of your 8th grade students or anything in general, please feel free to reach out to me. And I will actually put my email in the chat so that you have it, nice and easy to click onto. And I believe that Miss Kara, our dean, is up next.
Mrs. Carr, we're not able to hear you. I don't.
I can jump in and talk a little bit about curriculum. Although the curriculum is really, I leave that up to other people. I get to talk about the fun stuff, like what kinds of classes you get to take here in middle school. And I know Mrs. Edelman just said that we'd be sharing a link. So I'm going to put that right in here and it's in the chat. And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Kathy Hassler. I am the guidance department chair here at the middle school. And we spend a lot of time here focusing on scheduling and what classes you're taking. So I could just give you a brief overview of that. Starting 5th grade into 6th grade, everybody is sort of enrolled in predominantly the same core classes: math, ELA, science, social studies. The majority of students take STEAM and writing workshop. Unlike elementary school, we actually have 2 periods in the day of electives. We have 1 period of phys ed that alternates with a class called seminar. And then another period, we have a quarter of art, music, library, and health. Most 6th graders have some portion of a flex period, and flex is just short for flexible, where they have time with one of their core teachers. Some students might also go to an AIS class, which Dr. Morales will talk about. Some students might go to a skills class, which Mrs. Jordan will talk about. Some students have band, orchestra, chorus, expand. So it really is a very flexible period. That is in 6th grade. 7th grade is fairly similar, same cores. I won't go through all of them again, except for that in 7th grade, we introduce a world language. Some of the encores change also a little bit. We start offering technology and a fax class in 7th grade. But the big change is the world language. Students will be selecting that at the end of their 6th grade year. In fact, we're in the middle of that process right now. That, again, the vast majority of students will take a world language in 7th grade. That's part of the graduation requirements in New York State. Again, as Mrs. Edelman said, that's also the year students can begin accelerated math. And then in 8th grade, a very similar pattern of core classes, encore classes, a continuation of language, and possibly the introduction of biology or living environment into their 8th grade curriculum in lieu of Science 8. And that is an overview from 8th to 9th grade. If any of you here have an 8th grader, we've already started that scheduling process. It's well underway. They've already toured the high school, gone through all the course selections with the counselors, and most students have already made their high school course selections at this point in 8th grade.
And I can chime in very quickly. Similar to the link that was posted regarding the middle school curriculum overview, if you go to the high school website, the high school program of studies is also posted there, where you can see, again, as part of like course selection, you can see descriptions of all of the various courses that they offer, because 8th to 9th is the beginning of even more electives being given to students. So that 8th to 9th grade selection, you can go to the high school website and find their entire program of studies too. I think next up on the agenda is
Karen Jordan.
Is Karen Jordan. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Jordan. I'm the Director of Secondary Special Education. I know some of you on our Google Meet, and you had the opportunity to join us for the 5th to 6th grade transition evening for our parents with students with disabilities. So some of this is a little bit repetitive, but I'm really excited to share. I am responsible for grades 6 through 12 for all things special education and under Section 504. At the middle school, we have a full continuum of services, which consists of students who are in regular education who receive related services only. They may receive a program for integrated co-teaching. We also have special classes, and we have a specially designed special education program for students who may or may not be alternately assessed in their future. And right now we are in annual review season. So we are sitting down at the table to review all of our students with disabilities programs for the upcoming school year, for the 23-24 school year. And if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat box, and certainly I can answer anything that you may have to ask me.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. So I'm going to go back to Mrs. Kara. I think that it says Lori Edelman, but it's Lori and Mrs. Kara, right? So now you can unmute yourself and introduce you and, talk a little bit about what you do at the middle school.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry about that. Keisha Kara here. I'm the new dean. This is a new position here. So we're sort of figuring this role out as we go. Some of the things that we've been focusing on here, along with the rest of the administrative team, is, obviously the discipline piece. But for myself, my vision is the reflection and the repair process, and having students really think about what they're learning from mistakes that they may have made, and what is the plan for moving forward, not just a simple consequence for a behavior. So I work with each of the assistant principals on each grade level, and I see all of your students, and we have a lot of mediations and help them get through some of the issues that they have with each other, some peer conflicts. So we do a lot of that throughout the day. We're also working on some new building-wide incentives, myself along with Mrs. Edelman, to just sort of positively reinforce some of the kids and shine the light on students that are doing the right thing, and not just students that are making mistakes. So
thank you.
I'll also, if I could just jump right into, I just want to mention how great it's been to have Mrs. Carr and a dean of students here in the building. I mean, she has been a tremendous help. She is not somebody that is in her office, often, unless it's working with students. But she is out there in the hall. She's at all of the lunchtime period. She's outside with the kids. She really spends all of her day working directly with students, and she has been a huge support for our building. And I think that the piece that she mentioned about working on positive, behaviors and positive choices, and trying to build a climate and a culture where kids want to come to school, because that's what's going to drive their success. So she has been instrumental, along with Mrs. Edelman, in coming up with some of those ideas and plans. We have a ton of ideas. We're trying to, go slowly with them because we don't want it to be too much at once. But, over the years, we have a lot of ideas, and I think we're really excited for the direction that we're headed in with the teachers and administrators that we have in place to support your kids here.
I also wanted to jump in just to say that we're happy to have her as part of the middle school team. One of the things when we decide if we're going to add a position is really what is our community saying, what are our staff say, what do our administrators say. And I think that one of the things that came out of last year was we had a lot of students who were coming to what we call superintendent hearings. And hopefully no one on this call knows what that means, but I should share with you that a superintendent hearing is when a student has broken the code of conduct to such an extent that the suspension is probably or most likely going to be more than 5 days. And so last year we saw a very high number of students, comparatively speaking from year to year, where we were getting a lot of students who were coming to a superintendent hearing. And oftentimes students could be suspended for 30 days. Students can be suspended. I know they don't use this word. They could be expelled, based on the age and based on the infraction. But one of the things that we felt was really important was to have deans of students who are not just dealing with bad behavior, but looking for ways to help students mediate, any issue that's about to happen, and also to help our students develop skills that I feel that during the pandemic they lost, which was learning the skill to learn how to deal with one another and to be in a large building with lots of people. So I'm really happy that we have a dean at the middle school and a dean at the high school. And I can tell you from statistics that our number of students who are coming to hearings has really dropped drastically. So that's kudos to the work that's being done at the buildings with our staff, with our administrators, with everybody involved, and our parents as well. So I'm really happy that we have this position, and thank you. So I'm going to move on now to Mrs. Dr. Morales. She's our Director of Instructional Support.
Good afternoon. It's great to see you all here. I am Karen Morales, the Director of Instructional Support, as Ms. Rodriguez just mentioned, which means that I oversee academic intervention services as well as English as a new language. Students can be referred for AIS services from their prior 5th grade teacher. They may recommend that those services roll over and continue for the 6th grade year, as well as teachers at the middle school who start to see that students may be having a difficult time reaching those grade level expectations. For ENL support, there is a state assessment that our ENL students take yearly. So in conjunction with that score on the NYSESLOT exam and how they're doing in their core content classes, we are able to provide a range of supports for our students who come in who are newly arriving and don't speak any English yet, as well as our students who are testing at the expanding level or even commanding, and keeping an eye on them to determine, even if they're at that commanding level, they may still need some academic intervention services. So if you have any questions regarding AIS or ENL, please feel free to reach out.
I'm going to shamelessly use a plug right here, which is we are always looking for ENL teachers. So if anyone is certified or knows of someone who is certified, who's really good and would like to come to Monroe Woodbury, we certainly would like to have them apply for a position here. The truth is we've been struggling with hiring or finding candidates that are certified to do this work, and it's important for us to support all of our students. So again, if anybody knows anyone who is ENL certified, we would love to have them send in their resume. And yes, this is a plug, but I've got to take every opportunity to get what we need. So again, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Morales. And last but not least, we have Julissa Rincon Tamazawi. She is our Director of Pupil Personnel Services.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see you. I know I'll get a chance to meet you all at some point. I am the Director of Pupil Personnel Services, as Ms. Rodriguez mentioned. I have the pleasure of supporting the teams across our district in K-12 and our families of students with disabilities who are placed in different programs outside of the district. It is a pleasure to work with you. I have the opportunity to work with SEPTA as well and find ways to keep us all connected. So one of my goals this year is to continue to do that work that's been going on here in the district. If you have any questions about what alternative program looks like for our students who might be referred by the Committee on Special Education to attend alternative programs, Ms. Jordan and myself work together to help our students and our families through that transition. So I am available, if you have any questions, I'll put my email on the chat as well. And I look forward to working with you down the line.
Thank you. I think it goes back to you, Dr. Hassler. You're going to talk about variety of tools.
I'm going to talk about what?
Variety of tools used to assess students. You spoke about that already. You kind of put it all together.
I think so. I mean, if you want me to talk more, I'm happy to talk more.
No, it's okay. You did a good job. There's also a whole thing here on state assessments. You did all of that. You were fast.
I think we're going to jump down to parent-teacher conferences. I think everything else was covered.
Okay, so that would be Lori Edelman, right?
Yep. Awesome. So we have some parent-teacher conferences coming up. So I'm just going to give you a couple of the dates, and we will also put that in the chat so that you have that as I'm just yelling them out so that you know what they are. So our first parent conference is March 7th, and our times are from 12:30 to 3. and that is with the Pick a Time virtual conferences. The next one is March 9th from 5:30 to 8. And then the last one for our spring conferences is Friday, March 24th from 12:30 to 3. And it's the third quarter, but it's still super important that you're checking in with your teachers to talk about your students' progress. Because, especially as the 8th grade assistant principal, you want to make sure that they're prepared for their high school career, which, ends up being that stepping stone for what they're going to do with the rest of their education and life. And we're going to put a few different links into the chat. One of those links will be so that you can actually directly click onto it and go into schedule your conference with your child's teachers. And then there's another link that actually, in case you have any questions, you haven't used Pick a Time before, or you just need a refresher, it shows you, it gives a link to the school website. It gives information about how to schedule the conferences. And there's even a video there that kind of helps guide you through step by step on what you need to do in order to set up those conferences. And as always, if you need any help at all scheduling those conferences, you can give a call right to the main office. Mr. Sullivan is the one that kind of spearheads the Pick a Time. So his secretary is very versed in how to take care of the Pick a Time conferencing. So she would be your go-to in the office. And then you can also email him, and we'll put his email address in the chat as well.
And
now
I
we
think
get- oh, sorry, go
one
ahead.
second before you continue, for those of you that are watching this after the live version of this, I don't think that you have the ability to be able to see the chat. So the links that we're talking about that are being posted in the chat for the people that are participating live now, we'll make sure that those are all posted on the school website. So you have the ability to be able to go directly to the middle school website to access those. So watching it after the fact, you won't see the links in the chat. They'll just be directly on the school website afterwards. Sorry about that.
So so that means that there is a benefit to being on this call. You get to see, you get this.
You get the instantaneous,
You can click on it and you have your information. Now this is an opportunity for Q&A. If there's questions that you have about any of the topics that we've discussed, if you feel like there's a question that you have or something that you need to share with us, please use the chat feature. Don't all start typing right away. So that means that everybody did a very, very good job of presenting all this information. And it can be, our first chat was at the elementary level. This is a lot of people on the call. And I think part of what we wanted to do was to make sure that you had a name to a face. Sometimes you hear about someone and you don't know who they are. And I think it makes it easier. Again, I want to reiterate that the purpose of this really is to communicate with our families about what's going on in school instructionally and what are the things that we offer and how you can partner with us. And I think the fact that you're here on this call with us means that you are willing to partner with us. And we know that everybody's lives are very busy. And so we did it at 12 o'clock. I mentioned this at the beginning, that we're going to try to do it at different times during the day. Because we realize that people have varied schedules. Some people work nights, some people work during the day, and we want to make sure that we reach as many communications. I see that I have a question. I have one question. Teachers definitely see STAR scores, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Teachers have access to various reports within the STAR system, and there's really a breakdown of student proficiency levels, in those reports that are given to teachers. That's what I was kind of mentioning earlier, that they should be using those reports to help drive their instruction and differentiate, for the needs of each individual student. So yes, you receive a parent report, with certain information, and teachers are able to see, to be honest, more information that's really broken down for them as instructors.
I also want to add to that. I think that one of the things we realize, we meaning the administration, is that our teachers have a lot going on in the classroom. And so when you're looking at data, you need time. And one of the things that we've built into our calendar, and you'll see it coming this coming year, are half days. And it's really to give our teachers an opportunity to sort of digest information. Because even though you have data, it's very, very hard if you don't have the time to sort of unpack it. So again, one of the things that we did this year, and I think that was very supported by everyone, was these half days. And so we'll have them again this coming year so that our teachers have an opportunity to be able to look at the assessment and really have time to develop plans and look at trends within their students. Second question, how do state tests affect students? Do they get hold back if they're behind or get extra help? That's a good question. State assessments.
Sure, I can take that. There's a couple of different uses of state assessments. If we're talking about the Regents exams are a little bit different because Regents exams are also graduation requirements and they're part of a student's transcript. In order to be able to get a Regents diploma, you have to pass certain Regents exams. So they do have an impact on students' progress through the curriculum in terms of receiving credit. At the middle level, you're really only talking about the algebra and biology course that we were talking about earlier. The state assessments that I was speaking about regarding the 6 through 8 ELA and math exam and the science exam are used a little bit differently. Those are not used and calculated into student grades. You don't see them in parent portal. They're not part of something that shows up as a test grade, in calculating a student's overall average. However, they are used for certain instructional decisions. Like one of the questions that you had asked is extra help. Yes, when we get, similar to what Mr. Berger was speaking about regarding STAR, we also get the full reports of all students that take the state exams. And that is one of the things that we use in terms of making determination about student progress is, how did the student do on the state assessments? And is this student needing any sort of additional help in the form of AIS in math or AIS in ELA? The teachers also receive the scores on the state assessments as well as are there classroom level decisions that the teachers need to be making to be able to support students. So yes, that information, similar to the STAR exam and a lot of other assessment results, those are used for being able to make instructional decisions for students. However, the 3 through 8 ELA and math and the science exam do not get used as part of a student average calculation in terms of credit acquisition.
And the other piece about these state assessments, the 3 through 8 test, I think that it's also important to note that you can have a student who's doing really well in school and not do well on that assessment. I think parents need to recognize that. Some students don't do well on state assessments. Some students may get anxiety. Some students just, it's not where they flourish. But that not doing well on that state assessment doesn't automatically put you into AIS or anything else. But it is, as we said before, a piece of the tool that we use to determine. The second thing is that one of the reasons we talk about students taking these tests is because they have to take the Regents exam. And I'll share with you that in the beginning, I was getting letters from parents whose students were in the high school, and they were writing letters saying, I want my child exempt from Regents exams. That's not possible. So it's really important for people to understand that when students get to the high school, that's not an option not to take the test. And so taking the test throughout the prior years really helps them to develop some stamina in taking these tests. I have another question. I have one question. If your child is in 7th grade regular math class, is it too late to be allowed to go into the accelerated math? Good question.
I can jump in a little bit. I think the first answer would be it's never absolutely too late, but there would be a few hurdles to overcome at this point. The first quarter of 7th grade math, the curriculum is pretty similar to the first quarter of the accelerated math program, but after that, the curriculum changes a little bit. So I think it would be an important conversation to have with your child's math teacher and school counselor now, like ASAP, because what you would want to avoid is if they did the whole year in 7th grade math, there would be topics that they would not have covered that they would need to take before going into algebra. So it's not impossible, but it's something that the sooner it can be addressed, the better. It's not common, but it's not impossible, I think would be the best answer.
And the reason for that is that students who are in algebra and students that are in biology in 8th grade do not sit for the 8th grade math exam, and they do not sit for the 8th grade science exam. And the reason why they don't is because the curriculum are different in those courses than what's assessed on those exams. So typically, especially in the case of algebra, that 7th grade accelerated math class picks up the additional topics that students would not receive in algebra in 8th grade. And that's why if they go from just math 7 rather than accelerated math 7 into algebra, there would be a lag there in curriculum, that there would be pieces that they would miss. So again, it's not a straight no, but there are things that would have to be put into place in order to be able to accommodate for that.
Thank you both. So we have, I just want to say thank you for adding Science Club this year. I know it's just getting started, and I would be happy to see more science clubs and activity programs. We miss doing the science fair, etc., from elementary school. Is that one of your ideas, Mr. Berger, about a science fair?
We have lots of ideas that are on the table. We haven't specifically discussed the science fair. We are talking about having a career fair soon. We haven't discussed a science fair, but we are trying to figure out ways to incorporate more STEAM activities for students that happen outside of the regular school day. So it's certainly something that I'm sure will come up, in the future. I don't know that we'll be able to plan one for this year, but it's certainly, something to discuss, I think, for the future. Absolutely.
And maybe if we have, maybe it could be not, like you said, not this year, but maybe for the 24-25 school year. And maybe we can get PTA to sort of help us, prepare that. Will there be summer enrichment program this year? I can answer that. The summer enrichment program that we had the last 2 years was a program that we were able to run because we had what was called the ARA grants. That money is no longer available, so we no longer have, and I think that's what you mean. I think it's a Lenny. I'm not sure if she's referring to the summer program that we had where we had students coming into school. If she can answer that question. Are you referring to the program we had the past 2 years? Not sure. If you're referring to the program that we had the last 2 years where we had at every building, she's saying, hold on. At every building, that is not happening. We still have our ENL programs that we have for the summer. We have summer Crusaders, but we will not be hosting that program again. Unfortunately, our money was expended, and that was only through a grant. She's saying, hold on. No, the summer program that had swimming, cooking, and etc. That's a Dr. Hassler question. Did we have summer cooking?
That I think that they're referring to the pre-COVID summer enrichment program that was predominantly at Pine Tree, and they had the various art classes and things like that. Is that something that was?
I think that's what they're referring to. I'm not sure. We haven't decided that exactly. We have not decided that. We have to take a look at that. But okay, those were great. Anything else? Any other questions? So it's 12:53. She says the program was held in the middle school. Probably, yes. I think it went from the middle school and the high school.
The past 2 years, it was like almost exclusively at Pine Tree, though, for whatever reason. But it did used to be, they used to have arts and crafts in the middle school.
Yeah, that was years ago, right? I think.
The last
COVID, yeah.
Right. The last version of it in 2019, pre-COVID, was the program that was at Pine Tree.
Right. It was not at the middle school. No,
Right.
I don't think so. So as I was saying, it's almost 1 o'clock. We've allotted an hour and a half because we weren't sure how many questions we would have. I do want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. It's important that we continue this partnership with our families and give you an opportunity to ask questions such as the ones that you asked. We will do this again. If there was a topic that we didn't discuss and you thought it would be important, please feel free to email me. I will put, I'm going to just put my email. If you would like to email me and let me know if there's a topic for our next Crusader chat. But again, I want to thank you for coming and attending, and I look forward to meeting you again. If there's any specific question you have about your child then certainly feel free to reach out to the appropriate person, or if it has just to do with the middle school principal or one of the assistant principals. But thank you for coming. And we look forward to our next meeting.